Hello everyone and welcome back to the latest episode of the Terrace podcast series where we look through the laws of the game. My name's Craig Anderson and I'm joined as always by Euan Taylor.
Hello Craig.
And this is a big one. We have been kind of building up to this. This is Law 12, Fouls and Misconduct. And we were talking about this off air a little bit, the fact that lots of the other laws cover one wee tiny thing, like the procedure for a corner kick, which I think we'll still to get to, and stuff like that. This one is like everything that's a foul plus all the red and yellow cards. So this may be a longer episode, and depending on how we get through it, could even be 2 episodes because it is it's lengthy. So I think the first place to start is I always think this: when you watch football, how do you know what a foul is? Where does your knowledge of what is a foul come from?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's it's a bit like I think it's a bit like sort of English grammar in a way. It's like you know when you see it, you know how to sort of what the laws are without knowing the nuts and bolts of it at all. So, and even with what's a yellow card and what's what's just a foul, I feel like most of the time, obviously there's difference of opinions on that, particularly last night as we record. But we could maybe touch on that later. But generally speaking, I think most people sort of have an idea in their head of, well, oh yeah, that's a yellow card, and you just expect the yellow card to come out, or you expect it to be a red card. I think red cards are maybe where people get there's probably obviously a bigger difference of opinion. But yeah, it's just something I suppose you know it when you see it, and you know what seems right and what seems wrong without really knowing the nuts and bolts, as I say, of the wording in the laws.
I think that's it for me. It's like you watch football from, but presumably certainly true for me, from the age of 3 or 4, and you start being aware of it, and it's like you just learn, right? Well, that's a foul. You can't be doing that. You can't tackle like that. And none of that really bears any resemblance to what, or none of that is informed by what's written down in these laws. Now, obviously, there's a little element of that because the referees are at least in some ways governed and judged by what's written down in these laws, and they give fouls. And as you watch football and you see fouls being given, and the referee keeps giving a foul for something, you're like, right, that's a foul. You're not allowed to do that. But it's very much to me, it's trying to. Unlike some of the other things where it's like matters of fact, and you'll have this with law quite a lot, I suppose, you as well.
Yeah.
Some things are matters of fact. It's really easy to write down and define. When you're talking about, for example, a player goes into a slide tackle to try and win the ball off an opponent, exactly what makes that a foul, exactly what makes the tackle a yellow card, exactly what makes the tackle a red card is a much more tricky thing to define. And I think we'll see some of that as we go through this.
Yes.
So we might as well get started with an introduction. So first of all, direct and indirect free kicks and penalty kicks can only be awarded when the ball is in play. We spoke about this before in terms of another law that the one that always springs to mind, and I've definitely mentioned this. I think we also mentioned it by mistake when we nearly started re-recording an episode we'd already done, which was Rangers v Victoria Zizkov away. Or no, it was at Ibrox, I think, and one of their players got sent off for an off-the-ball incident in the box before a penalty. Before a corner, sorry.
Yeah.
And initially, the commentators, I remember listening to it on the radio, were saying, that'll be a penalty for Rangers, but it wasn't because the corner hadn't been taken, so the ball wasn't in play. And you'll see that quite a lot, and we definitely also spoke about this, about referees sometimes preemptively speaking to players about sort of congestion in the box in relation to, before the ball's in play, to try and kind of prevent it happening. But it's important, if the ball's not in play, it can't be a foul. Or sorry, yes. It can't be a direct or an indirect free kick. You can still get penalised for things. Right, so let's start with a direct free kick and what offences can lead to a direct free kick. And it's if a player commits any of the following offences in a manner considered to be careless, reckless, or using excessive force. We'll come back to those 3 wordings later on. But essentially, careless will be a foul, reckless will be a yellow card, and using excessive force will be a red card in each of these cases. That's kind of the nomenclature that's been used for each of those things. But we'll come on to that a little bit more. but the offences that are listed here are charges. So what would you say a charge is being on the football park?
I suppose that could, yeah, like a shoulder barge, or I suppose you do see it. It's not often, you wouldn't often describe it like that in football parlance, but it is something you see.
But I suppose also what Zinedine Zidane did to Marco Materazzi in the 2006 World Cup final could be defined as a charge as well, using excessive force, which is why he was sent off. But again, that's for later.
There's one I can remember with it was Lee McCulloch. I'm sure against Aberdeen. I'm sure he like ran at, it was like an off the ball thing. I'm pretty sure, but he like ran across the pitch and then like charged into, I think it was Scott Severin at the time for Aberdeen, and he got sent off. It was like a forearm smash sort of thing. It was fair enough.
Ben Thatcher on Pedro Mendes. Yeah, Lee McCulloch's very much one of the chargiest players I could imagine, actually.
Exactly.
Then we have a fairly similar one, which is jumps at. Now this is maybe where we're recording this the morning or the afternoon after Rangers lost to Dynamo Kiev at Hampden, and Jefty was received a second yellow card for an incident where he certainly jumped at a player. Now, whether that was careless, reckless, or it definitely wasn't excessive force, but was it? Even, it would have to be careless in order for it to be a foul. Jumping at someone obviously happens all the time in football. If you're jumping to header a ball, you're by definition usually jumping at or towards someone. It's the careless aspect of it that would make it a foul, and a recklessness that would make it a yellow card. I mean, this is basically anything. This is basically governing all aerial challenges. Essentially, it's saying when you challenge someone in the air, is there a degree of recklessness or carelessness to it when you do so? And if there is, then it should be a foul. We're not like going to interpreting that specific incident, but that's the law that's covered, I guess.
Yeah, and I suppose that's one where, in my head, like I don't treat it the same, and I feel that most people don't either. In terms of like challenges in the air, something that would, if it was on the ground and it was like a side tackle and it was otherwise the sort of same contact, I would like definitely think, oh, that's 100% a penalty or a free kick or whatever. If it's in the air, I don't know what it is, but I certainly, there's at least a part of me think doesn't really expect a foul to be given, and that's, even if if a goalkeeper slightly misses the ball and clatters into a striker that's jumping for a cross or whatever, or if two players go up for a header and one player misses it and heads his opponent, I do feel you're starting to see more of those given. I don't know if that could be like a sort of knock-on effect of VAR, because I think it's kind of hard to judge. Kelly had one, in the European game as we recorded last week as well, which was obviously you're given on the park and then overruled by VAR. But I just something about I don't think of it as clear cut, even though it probably should be, and it may be a start that it is now. But I certainly don't feel that you used to get to see as many penalties, particularly given when there was a slight misjudgment and basically if the ball was in the air, there was almost like fair game unless it was like an absolutely sort of brutal collision.
Yeah, I feel like it used to just get described as it was a 50-50 and move on. And I think, challenges in the air probably lend themselves quite a lot to that 50-50 idea, because it's generally both players have got the same goal in mind when they jump up for the header, which is to win the ball. By definition, generally only one of them can. And so it feels harsh to penalise a player who has jumped up and won the ball if they then collide with the other player subsequently. But also it kind of feels harsh, I think that's in general, to overly penalise a player when they have attempted to get a ball but just been beaten to it. Now, I mean, as you say, on the deck, you always give a foul for that, but you can think back to the Euros and obviously Barnabas Varga of Hungary when Angus Gunn, we didn't really exactly see what happened, but it seems to have been basically cleaned out by Angus Gunn coming to punch the ball, and there was at least some VAR check for this, and you kind of assume incorrectly, and I was getting ready to be really annoyed at it, that because of the extent of an injury to the player, like somehow that automatically puts Gunn at fault. But unfortunately, like for whatever reason, I think Gunn, it was a fair and valid punch on the ball that he got, and the guy gets himself in the way. I don't exactly know what happened, couldn't obviously get too many replays of it, but that's the kind of one that annoys me, where it's like one player is doing exactly the thing you would expect them to do, and another player like gets in the way. It's fine if like it's like but we are seeing that, and but that's kind of jumps at is basically everything aerial, because none of the rest of them represent anything aerial at all. So we've then got kicks or attempts to kick. Fairly clear cut, I think. Of the lot, like if you try to kick an opponent, then you are going to be penalised for that. If you do it carelessly, I don't know how you carelessly kick someone, to be honest, but if you did, then you would just be a foul. And again, a reckless kick on someone is a yellow, and actually more frequently than not, if you're kicking someone, the force used is excessive and it's a red card, because generally, unless it's like one of those where someone's going away from you and you kind of clip the leg, is just to trip them. But trips is in there later on, as we'll get to.
Yeah, and there have been a few examples of that, hasn't there, when some, there is like I feel that's maybe an area of the laws which people get a bit confused by. And there's one of the bits that actually annoys me about Scottish football in particular, and I would call it the sort of the Morelos lens, in that Scottish football fans, like, generally, like, have quite a high bar for what they think should be a red card, in terms of it's like a tackle, an attempt to win the ball. And I think Scottish football fans have a very low bar as to what they think should be a red card when it's like something like an off the ball petty retaliation type thing.
Yeah.
And so like a really meaty tackle that could break someone's leg, well, if they won the ball, then people think that should be fine. If you just sort of flick an arm out at somebody, then people think it should be a red card. And that sort of, like, even if you barely touched them, and that kind of that was sometimes Morelos tried to hit somebody off the ball and hit them quite hard, in which case, fair enough, that is a red card. But there's quite a few times where it was just like, I think it was one with Scott Brown, where he just sort of like put an arm out and like hit him sort of on the chest. Then there was other bit, Scott Brown goes down, clutching his face, red card. It's like that, and people, and it. I don't know if it's because people think, well, that's stupid, so you deserve a red card, which it is. But I feel like it's one of the ways where I think you improve football as a sport by getting rid of tackles that will hurt people, and the sort of petty off the ball stuff. If you just tell people to grow up and maybe flash a yellow card, that's sufficient, rather than sending someone off. So that's a bit of a frustration for me.
I think you'll get into the and this comes into some of the other ones that we'll talk about as well. But this is one where I think Andy Gray's got a lot to answer for, in that I think I've said this before with other incidents as well. Like the commentary, it was always, and it wasn't just him, but you'd always get, you're always running a risk if you raise your hands, and then people somehow now think that raising your hands to someone will automatically be a red card. When, as we'll get onto the definition of excessive force, actually, by law, by the way it's written, generally raising your hands to someone won't be, except in certain cases, which we'll get onto. And that leads us to one of the next ones, which is pushes. Now, again, you can think about pushes off the ball, but I think also you're thinking about pushing someone in the back when you're jumping for a header. That's probably the most common type of push you'll see. Generally, that's going to be a foul if spotted. If you can get away with it, then well done. But that's fairly clear cut. There is no situation in which a push is like a normal footballing action, so I think these ones are quite clear cut. I suppose when we're talking about the kicks, I suppose the other type of kick is when you try to kick the ball and the ball is no longer there because another player has removed it from the situation, and I guess that's where fouls do often get given. Strikes or attempts to strike, brackets including headbutt. Clearly, again, very much something that needs no, in terms of that action being a foul, needs no further explanation. It's not part of football, so you kind of, obviously there's no sort of confusion there. Tackles or challenges is obviously now you could read that as saying, what does that mean, that tackling or challenging someone is always a foul? But it obviously says that it has to be done with carelessness, recklessness, or using excessive force. So if you tackle someone carelessly, then that will be a foul. And this is as much as like, this is your like bread and butter foul. Like 90% of your fouls when players are running with the ball is this. And yet that's as much definition as you're really getting. There's a wee bit more on what careless means. But I think it is very much like, and this is to me how it should be. You're saying to a referee and you're saying to the players, you have watched enough football, you have played enough football, you know what a foul is. Don't make us define exactly what corresponds to a foul from a tackle. And then the other one, trips or attempts to trip, is the last one. Again, I guess the attempts to appears 3 times, which is attempts to kick, attempts to strike, but then attempts to trip. If you kind of try and do something but don't, you can still be penalised for it. So if you try to trip someone, clip their heel, they aren't actually tripped, then it can still be a foul. You can still be penalised for it as well. But yeah, so that in itself that's your list of fouls. That's the only things that there are other, I guess handball's the other thing that's still to come, but that's mainly your list of fouls that represent a direct free kick. And then we've got some definitions of careless, reckless, and excessive force, and this is where this comes in. So it says careless is when a player shows a lack of attention or consideration when making a challenge or acts without precaution. And then it says no disciplinary sanction is needed. So this is your garden foul. You've committed a foul, but it's just a foul. And to me, most fouls are just a foul, but lots of people don't see it that way. So that's kind of where that goes. So carelessness is what most things are. Then reckless will be when a player acts with disregard to the danger to or consequences for an opponent. So you are making a challenge of some sort and you've not really thought it through. So you're being reckless. I suppose the word exists in English language for a reason. That should be a yellow card. Again, some fouls are reckless. If you slide in and, for example, you've got your studs showing, but it's on the ground, even if you win the ball, those studs could hurt the opponent, and therefore that could be considered reckless. There's obviously a massive amount of interpretation here. I would say I am very much on the lenient side in terms of tackles and fouls in general, but other people won't be, and I don't know how you get away from that. I think referees are always going to see the game differently. We on the podcast generally see things differently. You're a red card fiend. You're not so bad on the other ones, but we all see things. And then the final one, using excessive force, is when the player exceeds the necessary use of force and or endangers the safety of an opponent and must be sent off. And I think this is obviously a bit tricky because lots of things that you do naturally will endanger the safety of someone. So if you take it to its most literal end, then jumping for a header with an opponent could endanger their safety because you could bump them and they could fall awkwardly and break their leg. But to me, that's not you've not endangered their safety. They've endangered their own safety by the act of jumping in the first place. But this is where this line comes in. But I think it's where I think you should treat it as an opponent minding their own business almost. It's like being collateral damage in the action that you've taken. So you go into a tackle and you've not thought twice about how much you're going to hurt them, and actually what you do does run the risk of hurting them, even if it doesn't. But it's obviously quite tricky. I don't know what to say about this, because it's a hard thing with this. This is fundamental to much of the decision making in football, but it's so subjective. So how do we break this down any further? Like, these are the words, and that's what you, me, or anyone refereeing a match has got to go on. Plus, like, years of experience, I suppose.
Yeah. It's I always obviously it's because of my my legal training and all that, but there's I do think people actually think of it and sometimes in these terms, and you hear it a lot in terms of intention, and how that is not really ever mentioned in here, but it's often mentioned in terms of, oh, he didn't mean it, and that's that is part of it's part of the criminal law in Scotland, is you have to sort of decide whether there's there's the intention side of it. So if someone commits a crime on purpose and meaning to do it, or there's like wicked recklessness, which is when you basically endangered somebody so much by being so reckless that actually it's the same. It doesn't matter if you meant it or not. And it's actually that's really the part of that carries into sort of football laws. Really, is it doesn't really matter what you meant to do. It's if it's almost how would like a bias. No one, the referee can't be in your head, so they just have to judge it on what it looks like on the park, and it doesn't matter if you meant to do somebody or if you did it by accident, but just the way you went in to attack or whatever. So yeah, I think the intention element is something that is an interesting one, but you don't obviously you do. Yeah, and this is a different story, but I think intentional fouls, which you do see a lot, should actually be punished harsher than they are often. And by which I probably mean like tactical fouls. Because I think you see that. I think that's something that makes football a lot worse, and a lot of the big teams do it in a very clever way, which avoids sanction. And actually, again, that's not in here in terms of that's where the intention element maybe could be a wee bit useful. Where basically, if you try to play, if you try to foul or try to make a foul with no intention of playing the ball, should that be or no realistic chance to play the ball, should that be dealt with harsher? I think it should be.
I think so. So there will be a little element of intent later on. It's certainly one of the considerations, but you're right, it's not as well written. And I think that what you described at the end there is coming. Like, I think people are starting to see that is a bit of a scourge on the game. Is like both what you're talking about, tactical fouls, whether it be to stop teams beating the press, all that stuff at the very elite football, or in Scottish football generally, like pulling someone's shirt when they're running away. They will usually get booked for that, but also you see, and I think these are more egregious, people having a swing at someone when they're getting away from them to just bring them down, just trip them. And I think we will see some more severe sanctions. To me, if you swing at someone and they're away from you, it should always just be a red card, because you're not, there's no footballing reason to do that. And it's, to me, it's excessive force straight away because you're doing something you shouldn't be doing, but that's not how the laws see it at the moment. But I think that kind of thing will be coming. So obviously, that's the kind of list of ones where sanctions tend to apply for the more sort of standard fouls. And then there's another list, I don't know why it's split up like this, but another list of things that says a direct free kick is awarded if a player commits any of the following offences. It's a bit of an odd grab bag here, as we will see. So we've got a handball offence, brackets, except for a goalkeeper within the penalty area. We'll get on to handball in a bit. Holds an opponent, fairly straightforward. If you hold someone, again, I mean, how do you define holding? Because that's quite tricky in itself, because when you mark someone, if you put your hands on them to be touched tight, you're not really holding them, but sometimes they can make it look like you are, and you're starting to see things like that happening a bit more. Impedes an opponent with contact. So this is kind of tends to be like shielding the ball out of play or that type of thing, but you're getting in their way, but you're actually contacting them in doing so. And
see a lot of set pieces. I mean, teams tactically set up to do that.
That's a good one as well. And obviously it's that sort of, how do you prove that was done? Or the player just there, because obviously being on the pitch is not
exactly
a problem.
You're
it's like, if you impede someone by just standing still and them running into you, then you shouldn't really be getting a foul against you. But how do you kind of prove one way or the other? And I think that's where teams are quite clever. Then we get on to you've had those kind of basic things. The next one is bites or spits at someone on the team list or a match official. So but it's interesting because this is talking about a direct free kick. It's only a direct free kick if you bite at a person on the team lines, i.e. a player, sub or a coach who are listed or one of the match officials, clearly biting any or spitting at any person in the vicinity of a football match will still be a red card offence, and we'll get onto that. But if, for example, you bit a spectator, then while you would be sent off, it would not be a direct free kick. So that's where that distinction is, coming in. Not something that happens too often. But suppose Kung Fu kicked someone who was, without a shadow of a doubt, giving him lip. It's an example of fans getting involved with supporters. A 30-year-old reference for everyone there as well.
Yes.
And throws an object at the ball, an opponent or a match official, or makes contact with the ball with a held object. So
corner flag, maybe?
Corner flag. I guess your shin guard, I think, is one that I've seen before. So like a player like throwing their shin guard at the ball, or I don't know, a glove. I don't know. If you throw your hat at the ball, I don't know. A protective face mask.
Perhaps. Yeah.
Right. But anyway, I guess another ball would be an example. Maybe we did see that in Brazil, didn't we? Actually, that was viral over the summer. That player, it says throws there, but this player kicked extra ball at the ball as an opponent was running into the box, and the referee gave a penalty. And I guess it's one of these where it's like, spirit of the game, absolutely that is the right thing to do, but actually technically this says it's only throws, so I suspect we'll see that updated sharpish. But again, that is a direct free kick offence if you throw something at the ball or are holding something which makes contact with the ball, which I guess is just the same idea as a handball. It says, see also offences in Law 3. Law 3 was offences relating to the players and like what their kind of conduct on the park. We won't go back into that, but I'll just bring up Law 3, but it's to do with like substitution procedures and changing the goalkeeper and extra people on the field of play and stuff like that. We won't worry too much about that. We've already covered it. So here we go, Euan. We could have done a whole episode on this. This is handling the ball. That is how this is now the definition of what is handling the ball. For the purposes, let's start with this. For the purposes of determining handball offences, the upper boundary of the arm is in line with the bottom of the armpit. So you're looking at the bottom of the armpit upwards. That is your arm for a handball offence. Not every touch of the player's hand arm with the ball is an offence. Which might come as a surprise to people who watched Scottish football last season, but we are hopefully moving a little bit away from that. We'll wait and see. But the point is, and this very strongly used to be the case, just because it hits someone's arm isn't necessarily a handball offence, and people whinging about that type of incident has led to the mess that we're in now, partly, I would argue. But then we can say it is an offence if a player deliberately touches the ball with their hand or arm, for example, moving the hand or arm towards the ball. That's pretty clear cut. That's generally what handball used to be. A deliberate touch of the ball with the arm. You don't really need to say much. Yeah, you don't really need to say much about that. Like, I do remember one, it was, do you remember the guy Willie Miller who used to play for Hibs? Sticking with all the nearly 30-year-old references here. It's a really windy day at Easter Road, and the ball got like blittered up in the air, and the wind was like carrying it out of the pitch, and he like ran over to try and catch it, but the ball was still in play, and I think he may have got a second yellow card for it, or he got booked or something. That's obviously your example of a deliberate handball. Luis Suarez in the World Cup, that type of one, very clear cut. But obviously most handball offences are not that. And so here we have part 2. Touches the ball with their hand/arm when it has made their body unnaturally bigger. Then it goes on. A player is considered to have made their body unnaturally bigger when their position of their hand or arm is not a consequence of or justifiable by the player's body movement for that specific situation. The argument being, by having their hand or arm in such a position, the player takes a risk of their hand or arm being hit by the ball and being penalised. That's the one that, gets us all into all sorts of nonsense. So it's basically trying to say, something to say like all this stuff about silhouettes and stuff like that doesn't exist in the laws. That's like a kind of someone somewhere trying in good faith to try and explain it, and probably just creating fictitious laws that people then think exist. It's basically saying if the position of your hand is not natural to where how the game is being played, then you run the risk of the ball being hit off it and getting a foul. Now, that's really hard because now what you see is defenders putting their hands behind their back when they're defending crosses. There is nothing natural about that. Your hands would be at your side when you're defending a cross, but if you turn your body and your hand comes up, which it kind of will when you turn your body sometimes, and the ball hits it, you will be penalised. So they now are like defending crosses with their arms behind their back. Looks really stupid.
Which is unnatural in itself. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
I think the aerial ones are the ones that are really interesting for me on this, because when a player jumps to win the ball in the air, obviously you're using your arms for leverage. This comes into fouls with your arms as well. But again, if we forget about that aspect of it, there's a couple of things that happen. First of all, you're using your arms for leverage, and they can obviously, everyone jumps a bit differently. Like I'm not the most coordinated, so my arms probably flap about a bit when I jump. And you're going to be penalised potentially if like you're jumping to try and head at a ball and the cross maybe is a bit lower than you expect and it comes off your arm. Or, and I think you see this quite often, actually your arm like makes contact with the opponent and is like thrown up. And in these cases, I think they're quite tricky. And to me, this is where that's the law as it stands. To me, it needs to be wound back more to being an intentional action by the player. And anything which is your hand moving in a way that you didn't even mean your hand to move. Yeah. But how do you define it? It is a mess.
Yeah. Yeah. I know.
I hear people saying like any touch of the hand should just be a foul, and that's the absolute worst possible outcome because you'll just get people hitting. I was watching some of the hockey at the Olympics, and every time the ball hit someone's foot, whether they meant it or not, it was like a penalty corner. Now, a penalty corner is not as big as a penalty, but it was enough for me to like start watching it and being like, this is shite, I'm not watching this anymore, because basically you would get one of these penalty corners, which is like, if you imagine a corner in football, but from the 6-yard box, if that makes sense, maybe that's an 18-yard box.
Yeah.
You would then hit that into the box. Someone would take a shot from the edge of the box. It would hit someone else's foot, and then it would be another one. And it felt like it was just a bit of a nonsense. So I think some of that stuff about penalty, about deliberate stuff, is just a non-starter. Is there anything else there like that you think is interesting to you in the way it's phrased?
I mean, I think it's the interesting thing to me, I suppose, is obviously like that's what it says in the laws, and then there's always like the sort of guidance which then changes without the law necessarily changing. Yeah,
and the guidance is very mysterious. You don't really see it, and I think anything like this should be published or not used. That's my view.
That's my view as well. Anyway, we'll maybe come on to some other examples of it, but maybe just mention now. But like, say, for when we were looking at those, what's a foul, and there's like holding an opponent, for example, that is a foul. And then last season there was quite a few penalty. I remember specifically because they involved Rangers in terms of the guidance. So all it says in the law is if you hold an opponent that it's a foul, depending on whether it's careless, reckless, and so on. But there was clear guidance that was only to be that the referees were to take into consideration where the ball was and whether it affected the play. Because otherwise,
I think that was more for VAR though, right? Like that was like if for VAR to intervene. I think if the referee gave that, like, would be entitled to give that as a penalty if they saw it. Yeah, but I think it was maybe more for VAR intervening. But yeah, you're right. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah. So that so things like that, and then people are like, well, how come? Because I think it was one where Cantwell pulled an Aberdeen player, was it, in a maybe in the League Cup final, and it wasn't given. Whereas Aberdeen Rangers got one against Aberdeen in a league game when Goldson was up in the air and he got a pull. because the ball was sort of near goals when that happened. So there's things like that, which I don't think does anyone any favors, because it sort of gets bled through in like commentary sometimes, where people just start mentioning things that obviously they're being told by referees. I think it would do a lot of good for that to be public. I read an article. I was like in a sort of interview with Bobby Madden recently, and he was sort of complaining about the fact it was talking about there's a Conor Barron potential handball in the first game of the season against Hearts, and he'd said, basically Bobby Madden was saying he didn't think it was a penalty either, but he was more into the fact that actually nobody's come out and explained the change to the handball interpretation, because the law hasn't really changed. So that kind of thing doesn't do. I mean, some people wouldn't be interested, but
it should be there. It should be a document. It should be there. It's like I find documents on the SFA website for rules and things like that, which nobody's really looking for. But if I want to know, for example, how many yellow cards does someone need to be suspended in the Scottish Cup or all that, there needs to be something there so that an average person can go and check it, I think, and it should be the same with this. It was interesting with that Conor Barron one that I think pretty much everyone, like unanimously, and that includes Celtic fans that I follow on kind of social media, were saying, I'm really glad that wasn't given, but it needs to be consistent. And I think that to me is like, it showed the way handball since VR was introduced in Scotland was interpreted was terrible under Kevin Clancy. Under Crawford Allen. Kevin Clancy may well have been responsible for some of the decisions, but Crawford Allen and hopefully Colin. I do think for all the stick Colin gets, he's probably a bit more of a common sense referee. That may sound stupid from the way he refereed football, but I think he may have more of a. I think we may see just the VR being used less, which should be a good thing. We'll wait and see on that. I could be proven badly wrong, but even by the time this comes out, but I think that would be the worst thing. The other aspect of handball, if you score in the opponent's goal directly from your hand or arm, even if accidental, including by the goalkeeper, then so I think it never used to be the case, but now a goalkeeper cannot throw the ball the length of the park and into the opponent's net. With a throw out, I mean, you would have to have someone behind you. I have seen some goalkeepers who have had a ludicrous throw. Kelly had an absolutely terrible goalkeeper called Damien Rascal. He was French. He didn't play many games. I've never seen a guy throw the ball so far in my life. He may have been able to score into the opposing net with his hands, but that is now no longer permitted.
That would be a great one for the confusion that would result if a goal got disallowed for that.
I would even suspect that you could see that goal initially being given by the referee and VAR having to jump in, because I think it'd be like so weird that like the referee would be or he would just kind of be standing about. But when we went to the VAR room when Joel and I went kind of for one of the briefings, there is a laws of the game book sitting next to each of the thing. Now the referees will know this, but I think it probably doesn't do them any harm for these weird things, just in case. Let's not get it wrong just because we forget something. But that's interesting. Like, even if accidental now, any goal where the ball goes in off your arm will not count. Really bad change for me. I can understand why people find it unpleasant if a goal goes in off someone's arm, but why should a handball be treated differently just because the ball goes into the net? And the one that's even worse for me is then immediately after the ball has touched the hand or arm, even if accidental. So if the ball is bobbing about in the box and it clips off someone's hand by their side in a natural position and they tap it in, it's a goal. But if their teammate taps that in, if it clips off your hand and you tap it in, it's not a goal. But if your teammate taps it in the exact same position who's standing right next to you, it is a goal. No sense at all. No. And we have seen goals disallowed. Like Kelly got one disallowed against St Johnstone 22-23 season, the same game that Andrew Considine's egregious handball in the box went unpunished both by the referee and VAR. Like, it was up above his head and he basically punched it. The same game, Kelly had to go correctly by the laws disallowed when Kyle Vassell like jumped up in the air and it kind of came down off his arm by his side and he prodded it home. It used to be even stricter than that because it used to be even a touch off of a teammate before it went in. Would do that, now it's yourself, but that one needs to go.
Yeah, that I remember that coming in, that change, because it used to be the harsher one, and because that felt like a VAR change, but it was before we had VAR. I remember two and one. I think so. I can't remember who had the shot, but someone in an Old Firm game that at Parkhead. I think the last time Rangers won there actually. But it was Christie or so. I can't remember who had a shot from outside the box, but hit Hudson Edwards' arm and went in. And it was the Kim Clancy, who was the referee on the day, didn't realise, and the goal stood when it shouldn't have at the time. And there was another one, it was Kilmarnock against the Rangers, possibly the same season, when Stephen O'Donnell handballed it. I mean, but wasn't. I don't think it was a handball per se.
It was Rory McKenzie who handled it.
O'Donnell scored the goal. Was it, yeah. And again, that wasn't, because that's sort of the point of like those, because handball is so hard to judge in a split second, especially for instance like that. So it was hard to blame the referees at the time, but it was the goals that technically shouldn't have been given.
Yeah. Right, so then we come on and we've done not bad there, but the goalkeeper has the same restrictions on handling the ball as any other player outside the penalty area. So when the goalkeeper's outside the area, there's not special rules for them. Worth saying, I suppose.
That's another thing that people don't realise. I think there's a school of thought that if a goalkeeper handles the ball outside the box, then it's like automatically a red card.
Yeah, and I feel it's just a free kick. Yeah, unless the offence, it's like with a lot of things, the penalty or the sanction for almost all instances, apart from the ones we talked about where it's like the excessive force or whatever, comes not from the act, but what the act prevents. So if a goalkeeper accidentally dribbles the ball out of the box and picks it up with nobody around, it's just a free kick. If someone is bearing down on goal and they come flying out to pick it up before that player gets there, it's a red card, and you're right with that. If the goalkeeper handles the ball inside the penalty area when not permitted to do so, then it's an indirect free kick, but with no sanction. So, like for example, picking up a back pass, I suppose, would be the main one. I say the main one, I think the only one.
I can't think of anyone else who would be able to do that.
And if the offence is, this is another one, I suppose, playing the ball a second time with or without the hand arm after a restart before it touches another player, then the goalkeeper can be sanctioned if it stops a promising attack or denies the opposing team a goal or goal scoring opportunity. So I suppose if you took a goal kick, and you do see this now, teams taking a goal kick by an outfielder passing the ball to the goalkeeper, and then so when would that happen? Inside a free kick, like
a bad touch or something, and then you have to like jump on the ball to stop a striker from getting it.
I was thinking
like that.
I'm thinking because a goal kick doesn't have to leave the penalty area now, but it does have to leave the goal area. So it can't. I think if a goal kick went into the 6-yard box, it has to come out of the 6-yard box, I think. So if that happened and then they went to pick it up because they thought a striker was going to score, he could be sent off for doing that. So like as if it was a defender handling the ball. Complicated thing that basically never happens. Then we've got a wee picture of what handball and no handball is for those watching on the video. For those of you who are listening, it is a silhouette of a person. The shoulder up to the armpit is green and is labelled no handball, and everything below that on the arm is labelled handball.
Whereas it's often described as the sleeve line.
Yeah.
That's not really correct.
Well, yeah, I think
unless you've got very short sleeves on your top.
Yeah, I suppose but the sleeve line doesn't make any sense either because teams sometimes players wear long sleeves. The thing with the Arsenal captain always sending the deciding how they go. You'd be like long sleeves every week. We can't get penalised for handball ever.
Exactly.
But it's the armpit, I suppose. It's just one of these people have chosen something as like a throwaway definition, but it then causes more problems. Right, so that's the direct free kicks done. We're now on to indirect free kicks. These should be a bit quicker. an indirect free kick is awarded if a player plays in a dangerous manner. Now, that's kind of a bit generic, but usually what that means is like a high foot where you don't make contact with an opponent. So an opponent is trying to head of the ball, you put your foot up in the air and they have to kind of pull out of the thing. You don't make any contact, but the way that you played has been dangerous, and that would be an indirect free kick. If you make contact, it's a direct free kick. Impedes the progress of an opponent without any contact being made. So if you kind of step across someone and they have to kind of run round you, I suppose. Guilty of dissent, using offensive or insulting or abusive language or actions or other verbal offences. So anything verbal is an indirect free kick. I think I said this, I can't remember if I said this before. There was a youth game once that I refereed, and I tended to have a pretty high bar for offensive language, but I think a guy had been having a go at me and I'd already, that's like 13, 14-year-olds. You're also partly as a referee, obviously not all referees will do this, but I'm also like, well, you want to prepare these people for when they maybe become professional footballers. So the guy had been like shouting at me and I was like, look, you can't really speak to the referee like that. If you do it again, you'll get a yellow card. And about 3 minutes later, I think a goal kick got taken, or a free kick, I'd given an offside, and then the free kick got taken. The ball was like sailing down the park, and the boys shouted, "Oh, like, fuck's sake, ref, that was a terrible decision," or whatever. And I thought, right, you've already been spoken to about this, so I stopped the game and gave him a yellow card. But everyone was really confused because then it was like an indirect free kick to like from like where the offence occurred, i.e. from where the guy was standing. I think that's where it was. The rules change on where these things get taken from all the time. But yeah, that would be an indirect free kick if you stop the game for verbals. If you prevent the goalkeeper from releasing the ball from their hands or try to kick or attempt to kick the ball when the goalkeeper is in the process of releasing it, then that's an indirect free kick. So obviously if you're like standing in front of the keeper stopping him kick it out, or if you do what you sometimes see people doing, which is like as the goalkeeper releases the ball, kick it away from them, then that's an indirect free kick offence. Initiates a deliberate trick for the ball to be passed, including from a free kick or goal kick, to the goalkeeper with the head, chest, knee to circumvent the law, whether or not the goalkeeper touches the ball with the hands. So that's basically for a back pass rule. If you're like, I want to pass this back to the goalkeeper, but I can't, so we'll flick it up and header it back, that's not allowed. And that's kind of an indirect free kick offence. There was some talk when the goal kick rule got changed about the ball not having to leave the box, that there was something, I can't remember exactly what it was. It was an early season European game involving Rangers, and I feel like it was like Alan McGregor, like did he pass it to someone who then, did he flick it, he hit a high goal kick to someone who then headed it back to him? And there was a bit of discussion about whether that was technically not allowed, and people eventually it kind of came to like it's kind of fine, because I always think with these things, if you can pull it off, then fair play to you. It seems more complicated than just passing it back and kicking it. And commits any other offence not mentioned in the laws for which play is stopped. So basically, if you do anything else that isn't covered elsewhere, then it's an indirect free kick. Also, if the goalkeeper holds the ball for more than 6 seconds without releasing it, obviously
never enforced.
To me, correctly so. The only reason this rule has to exist is because if there isn't a rule that says that, then the goalkeeper could hold the ball for the entire second half of a game without penalties. I think this rule has to be seen in that context of like why it's there, not like something to be like so strictly adhered to. But you rarely see it. I seem to remember a Champions League game with Celtic and Shakhtar Donetsk, where we're talking Martin O'Neill era or Strachan era here, where this was, I think the Shakhtar goalkeeper got pulled for it, but it's very rare, especially at the top level. Touches the ball.
Am I right in saying that it used to be you can only take a certain amount of steps?
Yes, that was the old version. It was like 4 steps or 4 seconds or something at one point. But thankfully, like, just let the goalkeepers do what they want as long as they're not taking the piss is how it should be. Touches the ball with a hand or arm after releasing it and before it has touched another player. So if you like drop the ball to kick it, fuck it up, and then pick the ball back up, that's an indirect free kick offence, because once you've released it, you can't pick it up again. Or touches the ball with the hand or arm unless the goalkeeper has So I guess this is the back pass. So it's just a fancy way of saying a back pass. Touches it with your hand or arm after it has been deliberately kicked by a teammate or it has been received directly from a throw-in. So you can't pick up a throw-in, and the back pass, the very specific wording is deliberately kicked. So if a player slices it and it goes backwards to his goalkeeper can catch that. If you knee it, which you see some smart ass players doing sometimes, Grant Murray that used to play for Killie was a very much a knee it back to the goalkeeper man, and you'd always be like looking for the opposing fans being outraged when he did it. But it has to be a deliberate kick. But that's the back pass. And then the last wee bit on this, which is the goalkeeper is considered to be in control of the ball with his hands when the ball is between his hands or between the hand and any surface, e.g. the ground or his own body, or by touching it with any part of the hands or arms except if it rebounds from the goalkeeper or he's made a save. So like if you've got the ball under control and then you're like holding it upwards in a cupped hand, for example, which you used to see in the olden days, that's considered still in your control. If you've just saved it and it happens to be making contact with your hand, that is not in control. Again, that's just a definition.
The
and
famous,
if you're bouncing, sorry,
George Best goal, I was going to say. I think was it against England? I think it was for Northern Ireland.
I think it was ruled out.
Yeah,
but I can't. And I think correctly under the current rules, and who knows what it was in the Wild West days. But you used to just be able to like punt goalkeepers into the net and all sorts.
Rangers had a striker back in the day. I can't remember his actual name, but his nickname was the Rhino, and that was he used to barge or charge would have been the football law rule. Where he used to apparently that's how he scored a lot of his goals, was just like knocking goalkeepers over the line while they're holding the ball.
Perfect, good. So. And then bouncing it on the ground or throwing it in the air. So if the goalkeeper has like thrown the ball up in the air to kick it, then that's still considered in their possession. Interestingly, though, if they throw it up in the air and it's outside the box, by the time that's still it's not handball. So it's like a weird I always find that a weird grey area. But yeah, in any of those situations, like the goalkeeper's got the ball under their control and you can't obviously kick it off them, basically. It says the goalkeeper cannot be challenged by an opponent when in control of the ball with their hands. So in playing in a dangerous manner is any action that while trying to play the ball threatens injury to someone or prevents a nearby player from playing the ball. And then it specifically says a scissors kick or bicycle kick is permissible provided it is not dangerous to an opponent.
It's a classic example of that. Just then in the first leg of the Rangers Dynamo Kiev tie that we were talking about earlier, when Cyril Dessers managed to kick two different centre halves with both feet while doing a bicycle kick, which was impressive.
Yes, a foul. Yes, very much. So that was very much dangerous to an opponent.
Yes.
And impeding the progress of an opponent without contact is the other one that's been clarified. It means moving into the opponent's path to obstruct, block, slow down, or force a change of direction when the ball is not within playing distance of either player. So that idea of within playing distance, I think, is the one that obviously annoys people, because that's where shielding the ball comes in. If you're holding the ball in the corner or trying to shield it out for a throw-in or a goal kick or whatever, that is allowed as long as the ball's within playing distance. But obviously then some of the actions you do whilst trying to do that could be a foul. But if the ball's not within playing distance, you can't just like step across someone. It does say, however, as we spoke about earlier, all players have a right to their position on the field of play, and being in the way of an opponent is not the same as moving into the way of an opponent, which is kind of we already mentioned. And then it talks about shielding as long as the opponent is not held off with the arms or body. But it does say that the player may be fairly challenged whilst doing so. So that like you're not really meant to use your body actively to shield the ball. Like you can obviously be in the way, but you're not meant to like move your body into them. But that's a bit complex. Right, I think we might just get through this in one go, because we're on to part 3, the main of the 3 main parts, with which is disciplinary action. And the first thing on this is to say the referee has the authority to take disciplinary action from the moment they enter the field of play for the pre-match inspection all the way up to leaving the field of play after the match ends, including a penalty shootout. So from the moment the referee first steps onto the park to like check the pitch, he then has power to dish out disciplinary action cards, etc. if before entering the field of play at the start of a match, a player or team official commits a sending off offence, the referee can prevent them from taking part in the match and report misconduct. But I think we already spoke about the fact that if that happens before the game starts, then another player can take their place. So it's not like starting with 10 men. A player who commits a cautionable offence either on or off the field of play is disciplined according to the offence. The yellow card communicates a caution and the red card communicates a sending off. Red and yellow cards still actually a relatively modern addition to football. I think the what was it, the 1966 World Cup was the first time they were introduced. We're still like less than 60 years old. Less than half of the history of football has involved the use of cards, which is quite interesting. Also think it's worth saying, like, cards are like so much more frequently given out now than they used to be. Like if you go back to like the 70s and 80s, like getting a yellow card was like quite surprising. Whereas like you'll see games where there's like 7 or 8 yellows and no one really bats an eyelid anymore. So that's interesting itself.
Well, the famous example, another Rangers old school example, but Willie Woodburn, who got banned Sendai because he got 5 red cards in his career. And that was him. But to be fair, quite possibly fair enough, given the how difficult it would be to get a red card in those days. But yeah, whereas I think Morelos managed to get one of like that many in a season.
Yeah, did Ryan Jack not get 3 in the space of like 2 months at one point? I'm sure as well.
Unjustly, at least a couple of them.
Yeah. But anyway. And then only a player, substituted player or team official may be shown the red or yellow cards. You can't be dishing out cards to fans. And you can't actually be dishing out cards to fellow officials. There's a famous incident where Andy McWilliam, who I slightly know, threw up at the side of the park at Rugby Park. I don't know if you remember that. It was a while ago. And the referee obviously humorously came over and showed him a yellow card after it. But then, quite annoyingly, like the No Such Thing as a Fish podcast, which I quite like, did a bit where like they made their stat about this like their thing was about a referee or an assistant referee getting a yellow card, but at no point did they like really talk about the fact it was just a bit of a joke. It took me out of their universe a bit, because I'm like, if you are doing this with something I know about, then how do I know that anything else you're talking about isn't in the kind of same boat? But
just like when you used to read like the Scottish column in the World Soccer or something like that, and you see things that are wrong, and you're like, if this is wrong, that's bad.
If this is wrong, is Poland wrong as well? Or gone example to say not actually about to embark on a spending spree? Right. Delaying the restart of play to show a card. Once the referee has decided to caution or send off a player, play must not be restarted until the sanction has been administered. This used to be at full stop. It used to be you cannot restart play until a card has been dished out. So once you've stopped it. However, it does now say, unless the non-offending team takes a quick free kick, has a clear goal scoring opportunity, and the referee has not started the disciplinary sanction procedure. So if a player is fouled, the referee's about to dish out the card, and the referee's thinking in his head, I have given this foul, I am going to give this card here, but he hasn't really done anything yet, and the attacking team get up and take a quick free kick and have a chance to score, then the referee should allow that to continue, which I think is a positive change. But only in the situation where you have like a clear goal scoring opportunity, like not if you're like trying to take a quick free kick 90 yards from goal. The sanction is administered at the next stoppage in such a case.
I feel a lot of referees wouldn't do that in practice and would call a team back. I mean, I feel like every example bringing up as Rangers related. Got them on the brain at the moment in particular, but there was one at the weekend where Rangers took a quick free kick and scored. I mean, that's slightly different in terms of if a referee's not ready or whatever, but I would argue the referee probably just should be ready. Like, how ready do you need to be to get you're on the pitch to referee the game if the game happens? But Rangers took a quick free kick and scored, and they got pulled back for not much apparent reason, really.
The one thing to say with that is, if the offence was denying an obvious goal scoring opportunity, if the ref was going to send the player off for denying obvious goal scoring opportunity, but then the team take a quick free kick and the ref lets that go, then it is no longer denying a goal scoring opportunity, and it would become a yellow card because you've not actually denied it. And if the offence was like interfering with or stopping a promising attack, i.e. the kind of it's not a red card, but it's a yellow card for that, and they let the game continue because, again, that hasn't been stopped. The card would no longer exist, so it's like being knocked down a one if you do that.
Is there not? Is there an example where something could be a yellow or even a red card, but because of what happens after, like so say it's a counter attack and the player wipes out a player like just as he's about to shoot, but the referee plays advantage and it falls to a teammate who scores anyway, then what would have been a red card is no longer a red card because it's not denying a goal scoring opportunity because the goal actually happened.
Yeah, exactly. It's the same idea, basically.
Yeah.
Obviously, if the foul is like a 2-footed tackle, it's always a red card. It's still a red card. But if the only reason if the card's been given is because, and I think we might get onto this because advantage is the next one. If the only reason the card is being given is for denying something, but then that's negated by the fact that it isn't denied, then the card is kind of suitably downgraded. It's in fact that is literally the next bit. If the referee plays an advantage for an offence which a caution or sending off would have been issued had play been stopped, this caution should be issued when the ball is next out of play. So, for example, you see someone pushing someone over off the ball, which could be a yellow card, but the play's raging on. You let play continue and you give the yellow card when the ball is out of play. That obviously happens quite a lot. I always enjoy it. It's something that I enjoy watching in football, which is like if you know there's been a bad tackle, but advantage has been played, and it kind of rages on for like 2 minutes or 3 minutes. You're like in your head, is the referee still going to go back and give this? But then it does say subsequently exactly what we discussed, which is that if it was a goal scoring opportunity, then it no longer becomes that with advantage.
Yeah. I remember there's one. That's actually one that there was a lot of that season, but one where I wish there'd been people on the ground for was Callum McGregor got sent off in an Old Firm game after Rangers had scored. So in the same move, it was the second yellow that he got, and I think that was actually questionable whether that should have. I think with that rule, whether it actually should have been given the yellow card. I can't actually remember. I think it was similar that he tried to wipe somebody out, but then the move sort of continued and there was a goal anyway.
Suppose the argument could be the foul itself may have been
sufficient. I think that was the argument. But
you're once more preempting the next bit, which is advantage should not be applied in situations involving serious foul play, violent conduct, or a second cautionable offence unless there is a clear opportunity to score a goal. So if there's a clear if it's a red card, basically, if it's a red card defence, you shouldn't really be playing advantage unless basically someone's about to tap it in, is essentially what they're saying. However, the referee must send the player off when the ball is nicked out of play, if they do, for any reason. So, for example, say there's a really bad tackle, but the ball was breaking to someone who's about to score. You let them score and then give the red card, or I guess if they don't score, but you've already played the advantage, you then let play continue, but once the ball's out of play, and I suspect in such cases the referee will find a very quick and convenient way to make sure the play stops, then play should be stopped straight away. And then it says, however, if that player who is about to be sent off but hasn't been because advantage has been played, then touches the ball or interferes with an opponent, the referee should immediately stop play. So, for example,
it's almost like you shouldn't exist. You're
shouldn't
like
exist on the park. If you touch the ball, the game's going to stop. And at such a point, it should be an indirect free kick to the other team as well. So, for example, that one where someone size someone down and is going to get red carded. If the goalkeeper saves it and that guy then makes a clearance, play should stop. I think in reality, I wonder if this one is more about VAR, where the referee hasn't given something that he should have done, and then that player subsequently involves themselves in an incident, maybe in a more attacking sense. It allows them. I guess the nightmare scenario would be a player commits a red card offence, and then that player scores a goal.
Yeah,
but and how can VAR the way it intervenes? So I wonder if that's also partly just a
that'd be absolutely class if you ended up I don't know with a indirect free kick in the opposite box and a red card after a guy
having
scored
scored
a goal. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're Bruce Willis in The Sixth Sense, basically. If you've done something like that, you're on the park, but you're not really.
And then finally, if a defender starts holding an attacker outside the penalty area and continues holding inside the penalty area, then the penalty should be given. So if it continues into the box, any offence that continues into the box, it should be a penalty.
I often feel that with tackles, you sometimes see that where like it's a tackle and it's sort of when the borderline cases, and you're like, well, you probably the first contact was outside the box, but then maybe possibly the contact which definitely made the attacking player like fall over was inside the box. I think sometimes you still get away with that.
Yeah, I think they are
a free kick.
They are kind of tricky to judge.
Yeah.
Cautionable offences. A player is cautioned, i.e. given a yellow card, if they are guilty of delaying the restart of play. Now that's quite generic, and it kind of really can cover any length of things. Like, are you waiting to kick off and not kicking off? Are you standing to try and take a throw in and not? That's a kind of delaying something that you've got, or trying to stop the opponent from restarting the play also. And it's quite general, so it's not specific to anything that a particular team does or doesn't do. It's not like time wasting. It's like anything you do to delay the restart deliberately could be a yellow card. Dissent by word or action, so a gesture would obviously count for that as well. For example, flashing an imaginary card, one that people seem to like, could be clapping a decision, throwing your arms up in the air in a particularly egregious way, kicking over water bottles. Although that sometimes is seen as a kind of red card for a manager at least. Entering, re-entering, or deliberately leaving the field of play without the referee's permission. We've talked a bit about this already, but if you either are off to get treatment and then come on without permission, or you go off without permission, then that should be a yellow card. Failing to respect the required distance when play is restarted with a dropped ball, corner kick, free kick, or throw-in. So if you're not the right distance back, then you can be given a yellow card. Persistent offences, and then it says in brackets, no specific number or pattern of offences constitutes persistent, so it's basically to the referee's discretion as to what persistent fouling is. My favourite one, when they just start pointing to parts of the pitch where offences have occurred to show the player. Unsporting behaviour, that is the one that actually is like a catch-all that basically includes nearly everything else we've spoken about. So all the fouls that we've talked about, tackles, pushes, all of that's all unsporting behaviour. Then we've got the VAR specific ones. Entering the referee review area. We already talked about all this, Euan. Remember that? There was specific different rules about whether the referee review area was at the side of the park and whether the other TV place was on site or off site and all that. But if you enter the referee review area, i.e. where the referee his wee marked off bit for the watching the screen, you should get a yellow card. And if you excessively use the TV signal, is it excessively? So you can maybe do it once, but don't do it too many times as well. And then a substitute or substituted player can also be cautioned if they are guilty of delaying the restart of play. So obviously the most common way a sub will do that is like putting the ball away when they're warming up or whatever. Dissent by word or action, just the same. So you can get booked if you're on the bench for doing that, or you're at the sideline as a sub. Entering the field of play without permission, unsporting behaviour. These are all basically the same things. Basically it's all the same things, but basically a sub or a substituted player can also get a card. When two separate cautionable offences are committed, even in close proximity, they should result in 2 cautions. So in theory, you could, if you entered the referee area whilst excessively using the review signal, then you could get 2 yellow cards for that, as an example. More naturally, for example, if you hack someone down for a yellow card and then before the referee's done anything, then maybe push someone over off the ball, you can actually get 2 yellow cards and a red. It's not like a double jeopardy situation where because you've already committed one offence, you've got like carte blanche at that point.
That's sort of, I think that was...
it used to be the case.
A classic example. I mean, I feel it's a bit like, give the guy, give players a chance sometimes.
I do agree.
But like Morelos, got another Morelos example, but he got when Rangers played UFA in the Europa League playoff a few seasons ago, and he managed to get sent off for, I think it was kicking the ball away and then got booked, and then dissent for getting booked. That was him
Perfect.
off. So that was magic.
But I do find that a little bit harsh. I mean, maybe not that one because he'd been shown the yellow card before he got the second one. I get what you're saying. It's like don't like on it. But the point of a yellow card, point of a caution, is to say don't do this again. So having a don't do this again before like punishing someone for doing it again before they've been told not to is a bit harsh. But yeah. And then unsporting behaviour, which is the big one, as I said, it's a kind of catch-all. It says, like, to start with, there are different circumstances where a player must be cautioned for unsporting behaviour, including if a player, I think they're giving the referee a wee bit of discretion that anything else they think could cover unsporting behaviour could be included here. So attempts to deceive the referee by feigning, e.g. by feigning injury or pretending to have been fouled, simulation, that's a yellow card offence. The famous one that we always see, changing places with the goalkeeper during play or without the referee's permission. As I say, you can never move on a football pitch without the left backs swapping with the goalkeeper while ball's in play. Commits any direct free kick in a reckless manner. That's the ones we talked about at the start of this. Handles the ball to interfere with or stop a promising attack, except when the referee awards a penalty for a non-deliberate handball offence. Because now, if an offence is non-deliberate as a handball, but is still being given as a foul because of the unnatural position, there shouldn't be a sanction. That's new. Denies an obvious goal-scoring opportunity, and the referee awards a penalty for a non-deliberate handball offence. So if you non-deliberately stop the ball from going into the net with your arm, then the penalty will still be given, but it will only be a yellow card. Kelly at Ibrox at the end of last season springs to mind. Who was it that was sent off? Can I remember? No. Joe Wright?
Oh, yeah. And towards the end of the season.
Yeah. It was post-split. It was a penalty under the rules, but he didn't really know anything about it. But he was sent off because it was on the line. That would now be a yellow card. Commits any other offence which interferes with or stops a promising attack. So if you're trying to stop a promising attack, most yellow cards, actually, I think this is what they're for. It's not about the offence, it's about where on the park they are. They tend to be yellows. And also, again, that says, except where the referee awards a penalty kick for an offence that was an attempt to play the ball, in which case there's no sanction because there's that kind of situation. And if you attempt to play the ball in the box and deny an obvious goal scoring opportunity, then that's a yellow card if the penalty is given because you try to play the ball. Handles the ball in an attempt to score a goal, whether or not the attempt is successful. So if you try and score with your hand, I'm literally wearing actually a the cameras a Diego Maradona t-shirt, that would be a yellow card defence if you try and score, even if it doesn't go in. Or in an unsuccessful attempt to prevent a goal. So if you are an outfielder and dive to try and save a shot and it still goes in, you then also get booked.
Surprisingly, still see people. I remember it was Seema did it last season against, was it Ross County? Terrible game. I'm sure he punched the ball in, which you can see why. Obviously, it's just an instinct thing now because previously you could have got away with it, but there's really no point doing it with VAR.
I think there's a clip from the Bundesliga from years ago, and it's Jens Lehmann playing. Did he play for Schalke? Is that right? Playing against Dortmund in a derby. And he goes up for a corner at the end. I think it's him. He goes up for a corner at the end and two-hand punches the ball into the net. It's instinctive. I think I've not made this up. So the incident definitely happened. I think it's Jens Lehmann. And obviously
he played for Dortmund actually. I don't know if it was
Dortmund against Schalke
then
maybe, or whatever way it was. Does that and obviously doesn't get away with it. The gloves would be the big giveaway, I think. Makes unauthorised marks on the field of play. I think we maybe spoke about that already. That's the kind of, for example, sort of duffing up the penalty spot could be an example. Or I suppose if you carried on your own wee bottle of referee spray to draw a fake line for retreating at a free kick, maybe another one. plays the ball when leaving the field of play after being given permission to leave. So if you ask the referee to go off the park to change your boots or whatever, and then while you're going off the park, you play the ball, like you shouldn't be. It's like that Matrix, Sixth Sense situation. You shouldn't be there, so you can't play the ball. Shows a lack of respect for the game. My favourite. I think you could argue any number of offences covered by that. And
that's
then
like that's the legal version. The legal version of that would be like breach of the peace.
Yes,
just like it can mean whatever you want it to mean.
It's just like being Alfredo Morelos in that case, or like being such and such. And then they initiates a deliberate trick for a pass back. The keeper is booked if he's responsible for it, and verbally distracts an opponent during player at a restart. So like shouting, I guess, like shouting for a ball by, like, you know, just to distract a player or whatever. Could be a yellow card offence. Right. Celebrating a goal.
Ooh.
Players can celebrate when a goal is scored. Thanks for that one, IFAB. But the celebration should not be excessive. Choreographed celebrations are not encouraged and must not cause excessive time wasting. Leaving the field of play to celebrate a goal is not a cautionable offence, but players should return as soon as possible. The reason the cautionable offences tend to happen is if the players have been instructed specifically to by a particular reason, or if they incite, like, it's like the unsporting behaviour, it's like they incite some sort of support or incident. But it's important to say that's literally there. Going off the park isn't a yellow card. But players should be cautioned, even if the goal is disallowed, and that's important because you do now see this happen, especially if we are climbing onto a perimeter fence and or approaching spectators in a manner which causes safety or security issues, and that's where most of your yellow cards come. Not the perimeter fences in Scotland, we don't have any of them, but the sort of security issues. Acting in a provocative, derisory or inflammatory way. That's no fun.
That's another Morelos one he got.
He
got sent off for celebrating a goal, as I recall.
Covering the head or face with a mask or other similar item. Facundo Sava, is that him?
Indeed.
He used to put a mask on. Pointless, no reason that should be a yellow card. Removing the shirt or covering the head with the shirt. Obviously, what a well spoken about one. I think that, like, I don't know if this is like a sponsor thing. I don't know if it became around as a sponsorship thing or it came around as like a morality thing. It's hard to tell. But either way, everyone hates it, but it is a rule and it has been for like 20 plus years. So get on with it.
It was Milik for Juventus got sent off for taking his top off, celebrating a disallowed goal last season.
Perfect.
I think it was.
Good. Well done.
So there you go. Magic.
I do enjoy when players, like, especially with like a last minute winner and they've not been booked, they just like take the card. They're like, I'm just going to do this anyway.
Am I right in saying on that, specifically in the example of going into the crowd, that it's only the goal scorer that would get booked for that?
It's usually the first person in, which is usually the goal scorer. Yeah, right. They're not going to, except in extreme circumstances, they're not going to, I guess in theory they could, but they could book everyone, but it will tend to be the first one in, I think. I always feel it's a bit unfair. Like, sometimes like players just get grabbed in. It's like, but anyway. And I suspect sometimes referees, if they're clever, will use their discretion to not book someone who's already been booked in that situation, if they can avoid it. Sending off offences then, and a player or substituted player who commits any of the following is sent off. Denying a goal scoring opportunity by committing a deliberate handball offence. Fairly self-explanatory, and then it says except for the goalkeeper in their penalty area, where I think they could still commit an offence with their hand, as we spoke about, but it wouldn't be a red card, deliberate goal scoring opportunity offence. Again, and now this has to be deliberate, so it has to be very much the Suarez and not like he was falling over but his hand was a wee bit outstretched. In that case, it would no longer be a red card. Denying a goal or obvious goal scoring opportunity by committing a non-deliberate handball offence outside of the penalty area for some reason, still a red card. So if someone is running through on goal and you do a non-deliberate handball, because it's not given a penalty and there's not double jeopardy, the red card can still be given. I suppose that would be maybe mostly covering a goalkeeper, I guess.
Yeah, probably.
If he comes running out his goal and then it, like, his arm is in an unnatural position and it stops a goal scoring opportunity, because it's outside the box, it's still a red card.
Yeah.
This is they've just like overly complicated to the pointlessness. Denying a goal or obvious goal scoring opportunity to an opponent who, and this is a new bit. So the obvious denying a goal or goal scoring opportunity, but now it's saying to an opponent whose overall movement is towards the offender's goal by an offence punishable by a free kick. So it's now kind of saying you can only get sent off for denying a goal scoring opportunity if their movement is generally towards the opposing goal. Which I suppose is fair enough. Serious foul play, that is your tackle. So that's any. I think we're going to get onto this. It's probably a bit longer than we thought. Serious foul play is when the ball is being you're making an attempt to win the ball or making an attempt, or the ball's within playing distance, and you commit a red card foul. So it's usually your bad tackles, basically. Serious foul play. Biting or spitting at someone, self-explanatory. Violent conduct is generally stuff that happens when the ball is not within playing distance. Punches, kicks, all the rest of it. Offensive, insulting, or abusive language or actions. And I guess it's up to the referee to determine when it's offensive rather than just dissent. So, kind of each to their own. Second yellow card, second caution, the same match, and obviously the famous entering the video operation room.
Very impressive.
So any such player who has been sent off must leave the vicinity of the field and the technical area. Like denying a goal scoring opportunity, where a player commits this is just like the clarification. If you commit an offence which denies a goal scoring opportunity and the referee awards a penalty, then the offender is cautioned that he only gets a yellow card if there was an attempt to play the ball or there was a challenge for the ball. But if it's like holding, pushing, pulling, or no possibility to play the ball, the player will be sent off. This has changed slightly because it used to be, it was like an attempt to play the ball, and this challenge for the ball part wasn't there. And so there was an incident where an Aberdeen player got sent off against Rangers, and it was like they had clearly made an attempt to play the ball, or like they were making a challenge for the ball, but it was like a clumsy, like fell over the top of him. So there wasn't an attempt to play the ball, but he was challenging for the ball fairly.
Yeah. Is that Ryan Hedges, maybe?
It could have been. And at the time, it was like, it was a red card under the rules, but it seemed quite unfair because it wasn't any different to him, like, trying to kick the ball and not.
I remember that one. It was basically, like, he was nowhere near the ball, but he was trying to. It wasn't like a pull or anything like that. He was just trying to, but he basically took. It was almost like probably a charge. You would describe it as, I think, from memory. But there was a collision. It was a penalty, and it was a red card because of that.
But now it would be seen as a challenge for the ball. I would argue, so it would be a yellow card, which seems fairer. Where a player denies a goal or an obvious goal scoring opportunity by committing a deliberate handball offence, it's always a red card. But where they commit a non-deliberate handball offence and it's a penalty, it's only a yellow card, which is what we spoke about earlier. So just clarifying that. If you're a player who is, or a sent-off player, or a substitute or a substituted player who enters the field of play without the referee's permission and interferes with an opponent or denies a goal-scoring opportunity, then you should also be sent off again, basically. So if you're a sub and you've come on, run on the park to deny a goal-scoring opportunity, you're still going to be sent off. Pointless. And the things that should be considered for denying a goal-scoring opportunity are the distance between the offence and the goal. Just one of the considerations. We'll remember, was Darren O'Day, wasn't it, was sent off in the League Cup final for denying a goal-scoring opportunity inside the other half. I think it was the one that went extra time, and Rangers were ahead, and the goalkeeper was maybe Boric. I don't know who the goalkeeper would have been. Was up for a corner, and the Rangers player was obviously running away, maybe still 80 yards from goal, but had a free run, and that was still a red card. So it's not the only thing. The general direction of the play, i.e., is it heading towards a goal? The likelihood of keeping or gaining control of the ball is obviously the really important one. If you're not getting to the ball or it's not clear, it becomes less likely to be a red card. And the location and number of defenders, which is where that Darren O'Day one fell down, because there were no other defenders. So mostly I think people tend to have a pretty good consensus on deliberate goal scoring opportunities. I think it's just the proximity to other players that sometimes gets them. It's like if there's another player round about and it looks like they're kind of able to defend, then usually that's not going to be a red card, unless like they're kind of clearly not getting there.
I think people get that as the wrong terminology that's often used, I suppose, is still like last man.
Yeah,
and it's not. That's not really the case.
And it hasn't been for 30 years probably.
Yeah, there was one. That was another Old Firm example. I think it was Beaton get sent off for, and that was one where there's a lot of jokes on Rangers Twitter at the time, like because Celtic fans were complaining that Ayer could have got back, and I think he would have had to like break Usain Bolt's like 20-meter record to actually get in between. But it was out wide. That was the thing. So it wasn't. It wasn't straight on. But he definitely. I can't remember. Yeah, who it was, but they would have got away, and they definitely got a shot away before the defender. So that was basically a goal scoring opportunity.
But it's always a bit tricky. Serious foul play, a tackle that endangers the safety of an opponent or uses excessive force or brutality must be sanctioned as serious foul play. We've talked so much about these fouls already, but it says then any player who lunges at an opponent in challenging the ball from the front, side or behind using one or both legs with excessive force or endangering the safety of an opponent is guilty of serious foul play. So it's really kind of leaning into the idea that it's a lunge that they're looking at. Like someone who's like uncontrolled. It is that control aspect. It's not the only thing, but the lunges are typically in there. I mean, we could talk for weeks about these, but I think we've kind of covered a lot of ground on these types of things already. And then violent conduct is when a player uses or attempts to use excessive force or brutality against an opponent when not challenging them for the ball, or against a teammate, team official, match official, spectator, or any other person, regardless of other contact is made. We did have, it was a St Johnstone game, wasn't it, where there was a couple of St Johnstone players had a fight with each other. Maybe 6-7 years ago. I want to say like Brian Easton might have been involved, but I could be making the players up completely. You'd assume Stephen McLean, but I don't think it was him.
Ricky Foster?
Yeah, no, it was Ricky Foster, yeah. It may not have been Brian Easton, but Ricky Foster was definitely involved. And then any player when not challenging for the ball who deliberately strikes an opponent on the head or face with the arm is guilty of violent conduct. So that's a specific. If you catch them in the face with your arm deliberately, unless it's negligible force, i.e. you're kind of tapping them, then that's going to be violent conduct. And I think they're specifically saying that like generally shoving someone or whatever is not violent conduct, but if you like shove a hand into their face because like the face specifically, that's going to be violent conduct. Which again, not got a great problem with. Yeah. And then we've got team officials. So this is fairly new, but when an offence is committed by someone from the technical area and the offender cannot be identified, the senior team coach present in the technical area will receive the sanction. So if you have if basically say something's thrown from the technical area and nobody knows who did it, then the manager will be the one who gets the sanction, even if they didn't do it. It's like when you're at school and the teacher just punishes the whole class if something something's done. In terms of the coaches, a warning. So this is like the 3 levels for coaches. You'll get a warning, a caution, a red card. They should be warned if they enter the field of play in a respectful or non-confrontational manner. So if they accidentally go on the field or they go on the field like to do something that they probably shouldn't do, but so it's like, oh, you shouldn't have done that, but fair enough. Fail to cooperate with a match official, for example, ignoring an instruction or request from a referee or the 4th official. For example, telling you to get back into your technical area or go and sit down or whatever it is, and you don't do it, then you'll get a warning. A minor low-level disagreement with a decision, you'll get a warning, but no more than that. Or occasionally leaving the confines of the technical area without committing another offence. You get warned but not penalised. Yeah, cautions, clearly and persistently not respecting the confines of the team's technical area. Mikel Arteta. Delaying the restart of play by their team. So stopping your own team from taking something will be a yellow card offence. I think we'll get on to stopping the other team from taking something will be a red. deliberately entering the technical area of the opposing team, brackets, non-confrontational. So deliberately going into their technical area, but not in a confrontational way. So maybe, I don't know. I don't know why, but yeah. Dissent by word or action, including throwing or kicking drinks, bottles, or other objects. Neil Lennon famously got sent off for that in the game up at Inverness, like in the. But like these days, it's seen as a yellow, which I think is fairer. Actions which show a clear lack of respect for the match officials, e.g., sarcastic clapping.
Mm-hmm.
So yellow card for the coaches. Entering the referee review area. Here we go again.
Mm-hmm.
Excessively or persistently gesturing for a red or yellow card. How do you what's the difference between the gesture for a red or a yellow? Who knows?
Just bring your own, possibly.
Which pocket you gesture into first. Excessively showing the TV signal for a VAR review. Acting in a provocative or inflammatory manner. Neil Lennon again. Persistent, unacceptable behaviour, including repeated warning offences, or showing a lack of respect for the game. Here we go again.
No, when you see it.
And then red card offences include but are not limited to delaying the restart of play by the opposing team, e.g. holding onto the ball, kicking the ball away, or instructing the movement of a player. Derek McInnes got sent off for this in a game last season where it was like the most like he didn't even know it was like the ball came into his technical area and he like threw it up, or like it was like really instinctive, or did he come onto the pitch to grab the ball? I
came onto the pitch. That was it. Didn't go off.
It didn't go off.
It, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think it probably had gone out. That was it. It had actually gone out.
But
it hadn't gone out, but it hadn't been given as going out. And then it was at Dundee, I think, was it?
Yeah,
I think it was. Yeah.
Deliberately leaving the technical area to show dissent towards or remonstrate a match official or act in a provocative manner. So if you go out the technical area to properly have a go at someone, you get sent off. Entering the opposing technical area in an aggressive or confrontational manner, that's what we want to see, red card. Mm-hmm. Throwing or kicking an object onto the field of play. Or so maybe that's where Neil Lennon went on. Maybe one of the water bottles went on the pitch, and that's why he got sent off. Everywhere. Entering the field of play to confront a match official, including at half-time and full-time. I think Mr. Philippe Clement was guilty of that last night. But it's hard because often they're coming on to shake hands and they just do a bit of confronting while they're there. That's how you do it. Entering the video.
He also did the excessive VAR gesturing for a decision that couldn't be VAR'd. But anyway, that's another one.
I thought it was interesting. Entering the video operation room again. At least a manager even could be driving to the SPFL video operation room during a game, unlike a player, but probably not happening. Physical or aggressive behaviour towards an opposing player, substitute, team official, match official, spectator, or any other person, e.g. ball boy / girl security or competition official, etc. So if a manager ever like decks Neil Doncaster, that would be a red card offence, and if they ever pushed over a ball boy. Now Derek McInnes, talking to him, was very physical with a ball boy after during the Kelly St Mirren game, but I assume that was fine because he was just chucking him up in the air in joy. Just like Lee Clark throwing a scarf over a police officer was also fine when he ran halfway down the touchline to celebrate Kelly's playoff victory. A second yellow card, also a red card for an official. Offensive, insulting or abusive language or actions, it's the same. One for Jose Mourinho here, using unauthorised electronic or communication equipment and or behaving in an inappropriate manner as a result of using electronic or communication equipment. So, yeah, all that, anything. Violent conduct, naturally.
Yes.
And then, finally, offences where an object or the ball is thrown. In all cases, the referee takes the appropriate disciplinary action. If you recklessly throw an object, you will caution the offender for unsporting behaviour. If you throw an object with excessive force, you will send off the offender for violent conduct. I was at a Scotland under-21s game a long time ago, as you'll be about to find out with the identity of the player involved. Michael Stewart was sent off for throwing the ball either at the referee, I think at an opponent. Got sent off. I think it was even a friendly as well, which says it all. Right, so finally,
Rangers Stephen Whittaker gets sent off in another failed Champions League playoff. I'm sure Stephen Whittaker gets sent off for throwing a ball at somebody.
A good way to go. A good way to go. Right, restart of play after fouls and misconduct. This one shouldn't take long. If the ball is out of play, play is restarted according to the previous decision. If the ball was in play and a player commits a physical offence inside the field of play, then an indirect free kick is given if it is against an... let's start this again. If they commit a physical offence against an opponent, then it will be an indirect or direct free kick or penalty kick. So if you commit some offence on an opponent, it will be a free kick to their team. If you commit a physical offence against a teammate, substitute, sub or sent off player, it will be a direct free kick or penalty kick. So there's no circumstances in which you can be given an indirect free kick for doing something to your own teammate. Don't know why that bit's in there. Makes no difference. All verbal offences is penalised with an indirect free kick. Already said that. If the referee stops play specifically for an offence committed by a player inside or outside the field of play, then play is restarted against an outside agent. So if you do something, like if you engage with a supporter, for example, and are penalised for that, then the play will be restarted with a dropped ball, unless an indirect free kick is awarded for leaving the field of play without the referee's permission. All these pointless ones. But if you engage with like a fan, then it'll be a drop ball rather than a free kick to anyone. If when the ball is in play, you commit an offence against someone outside the field of play, then play is restarted with a free kick on the boundary line nearest to where the offence occurred. So if the ball's in play and you go off the park and deck a sub, then the free kick will be where, like, the nearest boundary point to where that happened. And if that's within the penalty area, then it becomes a penalty. So if you went off behind the goals where a sub was warming up and they were in line with the penalty area and you decked them, that would be a penalty. There we go. A lot of these. If an offence is committed outside the field of play by a player against someone in their own team, then it's an indirect free kick on the boundary line closest to where it offends. So if you deck your own sub in that situation, then it's an indirect free kick to the other team in that position. If the player makes contact with the ball with an object held in the hand, e.g. a boot or a shin guard, we talked about this earlier, it's a direct free kick or penalty. So it's a boot. A boot's another one, I guess. If your boot comes off and you're holding it, you can't then like swing your boot at the ball with your hand. If you're on or off the field of play and you throw or kick an object at an opposing player, then play is restarted with a direct free kick from where the object struck or would have struck the person. So it's not where you throw the object from, it's where the object strikes. Very important to make that distinction. And if that's off the field of play, then it's on line with the nearest point. And if a sub or someone off the field of play throws something onto the field of play and it interferes with play, then it's a direct free kick or penalty. My goodness. Right. That brings us to the end of a very, very lengthy episode. I thought we were like, at one point I was like, we're making good time. We'll not need to split this up. We probably should have split it up, but we haven't. We've recorded it in one sitting. So here is 100 minutes on one law. Fortunately, none of the rest will be the same. I'll give you a couple of the FAQs just to stick with it, and then we'll wrap things up. A surprisingly small number of FAQs given the length of that law.
Yeah.
Right, let's pick this one. The referee has awarded a throw-in for Team A. Before taking the throw-in, Team A player, who is already off the field of play, argues with the Team B assistant coach who has left the technical area and provoked the thrower. The player attempts to strike the assistant coach. What is the referee's decision? There's a lot of decisions to make.
A lot of decisions to make. So provoked. It would depend on is it a physical provocation or whatever? I would think that would be a caution for the assistant coach. If I'm correct. Depending on if
I think it's always a bit vague, but we'll see.
We'll see. If he's physically provoked him, there would probably be a red. And then the player would have so the play stopped for a start, so the play will restart with a throw-in, as I understand it.
Yeah,
throw-in
that's right.
will remain. But if he attempts to strike, then that should probably be a red card for the thrower.
In both cases, it's kind of dependent because it's really dependent on the level of force.
Exactly.
The assistant coach is sent off for deliberately leaving the technical area to act in a provocative manner.
Right, okay.
The player is sent off for violent conduct, it said. And then, the throw-in was correct. But I think it's like a note when you see it. It's obviously hard to
I'd like to see that one. See what happens.
I would very much so.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good one. A defending player in Team A bites an attacking player with Team B inside the penalty area when the ball is in play. What is the referee's decision?
Penalty.
Anything else?
A red card.
Yeah. Fairly obvious. Right. Here's a good one. A defender, brackets Team A, denies an obvious goal-scoring opportunity by pulling an opponent's shirt outside the penalty area. The referee applies the advantage as the ball goes to another Team B player. After that, the same defender in Team A becomes involved in play and challenges fairly for the ball, not in a careless or reckless manner or using excessive force. What is the correct decision?
Well, that would be that's the ghost example. So you shouldn't be on the park at that point. Therefore, this play would be stopped. And the player would be sent off. So the defender, Team A, would be sent off, and it would be an indirect free kick. It's presuming that there was still an opportunity to score which hasn't been taken, I presume, in this example.
I think you're right, but I actually think it's going to just be a yellow card because the advantage was played.
Oh, possibly.
It does say that. But we were right. Oh, so it's saying that because that's complicated. So it's saying that because the red card stopped being a red card when the advantage was played,
right?
That player is no longer your mythical ghost.
Oh, right, okay.
And therefore, play should have been allowed to continue. But you say that, but these are the things that a referee on a park will sometimes have to be thinking about. I mean, not very often, but which is maybe why you don't see advantage played that often.
Yeah, well, it's just too complicated. Just easier just to stop the game.
We'll go with one last one, biggie. A substitute enters the video operation room during a match. The referee is informed about this decision when play next stops. What is the correct procedure?
Oh, that'll be a red card.
The referee will have to drive to the industrial estate where the video operation room is in order to show the red card. That is indeed correct. Again, obviously we're joking about this, but as we spoke about in the previous one, sometimes the video operation room is in the stadium. In Scotland it's not, but sometimes it is. Right, well that was a whopper of a law. Indeed. I think that'll be the last big one really. I suppose we've still got the VAR protocols as well, but we're on we've got 13 to 17 left to do, but these are all relatively short ones and will probably not last the 100 minutes that this one did. So thank you for sticking with it. I hope you've been enjoying these episodes. Certainly the early feedback from the ones that's gone out has been positive, and if you don't enjoy them, just do what the rest of us do and don't listen to it. Indeed. But thank you for joining me, Euan, and we'll hear you again soon.
Thank you, Rick.